Welcome to our channel, English Ease. What if I told you the man who created Hyundai, one of the biggest car companies in the world, once worked on muddy fields with no shoes, never went to college, and was so poor he couldn't afford a train ticket? So he ran 120 kilometers on foot just to chase a dream. This is not a motivational speech. This is not fiction. This is real. Today, you will hear the story of a boy who had nothing and built everything. A boy who had no money, no education, no power, but had one thing that changed his life: a decision to never stop trying. But why should you listen to this story? Because this is not just about business. This story will teach you how to fight when life hits you hard, how to believe when nobody believes in you, how to stand alone when the world shuts the door. And yes, this story will also improve your English. How? Because you are not just watching English, you are feeling it. You are living inside a story. That's the secret to fluency. Not grammar books, not boring vocabulary lists, but real stories with real emotion, told in easy, clear, and powerful English. So listen closely, because this video might not just teach you English. It might change your life. Now, let's begin the story of the man who started it all. Part 1, The Boy Who Had Nothing. Let's go back. The year is 1915. We're in a small, poor village in North Korea. Yes, before Korea was divided. A boy named Chung Ju-young is born into a family of farmers. They grow rice. They live in a straw roof house. They eat simple food, sometimes not enough. He is the eldest son in the family. That means he must help at the field every day. No shoes, no toys, no time to dream. From age 7, he carries water, cuts grass for cows, and helps plant rice. His father is strict and believes in one rule: work hard, don't dream. A farmer's son must become a farmer. But little Chung was different. Even as a child, he wanted more. He would stare at the mountains and think, "Is this all there is to life?" When he was around 14 years old, he had a dream. He wanted to study, go to school, learn math, become a teacher. So one day, he secretly left home and walked miles to enroll in a school. But his father found out, and in anger, he dragged him back to the farm. "Stop dreaming," his father said. "Dreams don't feed hungry mouths." This was the first time life told him, stay small. But something inside Chong refused. A few years later, he tried again. He left home with only a little money and a big dream. This time, he wanted to go to the city, Seoul. But he didn't have enough for a train ticket. So what did he do? He ran. Yes, 120 kilometers on foot. No phone, no food. Just the belief that there's more beyond those rice fields. When he reached Seoul, he found a job at a construction site. He worked with bricks and cement from sunrise to sunset. His hands bled, his back hurt, but every night he told himself, "One day I will not just build houses, I will build something much, much bigger." After months of hard work, he saved enough money to start something small. With a partner, he opened a tiny rice shop. It was his first taste of business. But one day, his partner stole all the money and disappeared. He lost everything. Many people would have gone back to the village, but not Chung. He wiped his tears and said, "Money can be taken, but not my fire, not my vision." He started over from zero again. Over the next few years, he worked any job he could find, carrying bricks, delivering salt, fixing bicycles, cleaning shoes. He watched, he listened, he learned, not from books, but from life. Slowly, he understood how business works, how people think, how to earn respect, not just money. Finally, in the 1940s, Chung opened a small construction business. He built roads and repaired bridges. Even the government started noticing his work. And then World War II ended. Korea was in pieces, broken, divided. But Chung saw opportunity. Where others saw ruins, he saw future roads. Part 2. Building from Ashes. The Birth of Hyundai. We ended Part 1 with Chung Ju-young opening a small construction business. But let's not move too fast, because the world he was stepping into, Korea in the 1940s, was not a world full of hope. It was a country that had just been freed from Japanese control after decades of occupation. But freedom didn't feel like freedom. The country was broken, poor, ruined. No proper roads, no clean water, no big companies, no system. Korea was like a body with a heartbeat, but no bones. But where others saw nothing, Chung Ju-young saw possibility. He believed if the country is broken, then we must rebuild it. We, the people, must become the builders. Step 1. In 1946. When he was around 31 years old, he officially started his company. He named it Hyundai, which means modern in Korean. Think about that. A man who grew up in the rice fields barefoot, without education, started a company called Modern. He didn't just want to build roads, he wanted to build the future. At first, Hyundai was just a small construction firm. They built roads, bridges, repaired buildings, mostly small jobs. But his mindset was always different. Most people would say, "We're too small to take big projects." But Chung said, "We are small because we never take big projects." He started bidding for bigger jobs. He took risks. He hired people smarter than him, and he watched everything like a hawk. He didn't sit in an office. He visited construction sites himself. He talked to workers. He checked every stone, every brick. He believed if you build something, it must be strong enough to carry the future. The Korean War. In 1950, the Korean War began. North versus South. Brother against brother. Cities burned. Thousands died. For many businesses, it was the end. But for Chung Ju-young, it was the beginning of something massive. He didn't run. He didn't shut down Hyundai. He looked at the destruction and thought, the country will need roads again. The country will need buildings again, and I will be the one to build them. He started working with the South Korean government, helping to rebuild key infrastructure. His workers were not just laborers. They were rebuilding their own homeland. This made Hyundai stronger, not just as a company, but as a name. People began to trust the name Hyundai because when everyone was afraid, Hyundai kept moving. One of the most famous and powerful moments in Chung's life came in the 1960s when the South Korean government gave him a challenge. We need a bridge built over the Han River. Can you do it? Now, here's the truth. Hyundai had never built a bridge before. Other companies laughed. They said, he doesn't even have an engineering degree. He's not a bridge builder. He's just a construction guy. But Chung said, if we keep saying we can't, we'll never learn how to do it. So he took the project. He gathered a team, hired engineers, studied every blueprint, visited bridges around the world, and then he started building. Every day he stood by the river, watching, planning, correcting. And after only 4 months, the Han River Bridge was completed. The same people who laughed at him now stood in silence, because a rice farmer's son had just built one of Korea's most important bridges. This wasn't just a bridge. This was a symbol, a message to the world. South Korea is rising, and Hyundai is helping it rise. After the bridge, Hyundai's reputation exploded. The government began trusting him more. He was given highways to build, dams, ports, shipyards. But Chung wasn't satisfied, because deep down he still remembered being a poor boy with no shoes. He wanted more than just money. He wanted transformation. He said, we cannot just copy the world. We must create. So he made a decision that shocked everyone. Hyundai will build ships. People laughed again. South Korea has no experience in shipbuilding. We don't even have the technology. But Chung smiled and said, then we'll learn. We'll start. We'll try. He met with British shipbuilders and convinced them to partner. He studied shipyards. He bought land in Ulon, South Korea, a fishing village, and said, this place will become the heart of Korea's industrial future. People thought he was mad. But by 1974, Hyundai had launched its first major ship and became one of the top shipbuilders in the world. From mud to metal, from rice fields to global factories, Chung was not building just a company anymore. He was building a dream factory. By the end of the 1970s, Chung had built roads, bridges, buildings, ports, ships. But there was still one thing missing: cars. South Korea imported all its cars from Japan and the West. But Chung asked a dangerous question. Why can't Korea make its own car? No one had an answer. So he did it himself. And that's where the next part of this story begins. Part 3. The Man Who Dared to Build a Car. Chung Ju-young. The boy who once walked 120 kilometers barefoot had now built Korea's first highways, shipyards, and ports. He was admired, trusted, respected. But he still wasn't satisfied, because deep down he remembered something. He remembered how Korea used to import cars from Japan, America, and Europe, and how people believed that Koreans could never build a car, that making cars was only for rich countries with powerful machines and high technology. But Chung, as always, believed in something else. He believed in his people. He said, "We've built roads. Now we must build the wheels that will run on them." His team was shocked. "Cars? We don't have the knowledge. We don't have engineers. We don't have the tools." But Chung simply replied, "Then we will learn. We will build the tools. We will train the engineers. That's what Hyundai means, modern." And this is the future. This was not a business decision. This was a national decision. He wanted to build a car for Korea. And that's where the story truly begins. In the early 1970s, Chung knew that building a car required something he didn't yet have: experience. So what did he do? He flew to Britain. He met with George Turnbull, a top engineer who had worked at British Leyland, a respected British car manufacturer. Turnbull was surprised. Why would a Korean businessman with no car company want to hire him? But Chung didn't beg. He didn't flatter. He simply showed his vision. He said, "I don't want to copy foreign cars. I want to build something new. I want your help." George Turnbull was impressed. He agreed, and he wasn't alone. Chung hired 5 top British car engineers, all experts in engines, transmissions, design, and safety. He brought them to Korea. These engineers arrived in a country that still had dirt roads in many places. They were surprised. They thought, "How will we build a car here?" But Chung gave them one thing that changed everything: belief. He said, "You've built cars before, but now you are building history." They didn't have a fancy lab. They didn't have high-end machines. They didn't have luxury offices. What they had was one warehouse and a leader who refused to give up. It took years of work. The team faced hundreds of failures. Engines didn't fit, parts broke during testing, the body design was too heavy. No company wanted to give them steel. But every time something failed, Chung didn't scream or walk away. He asked one question: what did we learn? He believed failure is not the opposite of success. It is the path to success. In 1975, after many long nights, arguments, experiments, and moments of despair, it happened. The Hyundai Pony was born. It was Korea's first national car. A small, affordable, simple vehicle. Not beautiful like a Mercedes, not fast like a Ferrari, but proudly Korean. When the first Hyundai Crony was unveiled in Seoul, the crowd went silent. And then they clapped, cheered, cried, "We can do it! We are not small anymore." But creating the pony was just the beginning. The real battle began when Hyundai tried to sell cars outside Korea. The big global car companies like Toyota, Ford, GM, Honda laughed. They said, "Korean cars? Please, they're toys." But Chung had heard this before. When he built bridges, they laughed. When he built ships, they laughed. Now he was building cars, and again they laughed. But he had a weapon they didn't expect: courage, discipline, and endless improvement. He started small. First, Hyundai sold cars to countries like Ecuador, Egypt, and Chile. Then, slowly, he entered Canada. And in 1986, he made a bold move. Hyundai entered the U.S. market. They introduced a model called the Hyundai Excel. It was not fancy, but it was affordable, fuel-efficient, easy to drive. People in America were curious. And guess what? In the very first year, Hyundai sold over 168,000 cars in the U.S. That was a record. The same companies that laughed now began to worry. But success was not permanent. As Hyundai sold more cars, something started to go wrong. Many cars had problems with engines, air conditioning, parts. Customers started complaining. American newspapers began calling Hyundai a low-quality brand. Sales dropped. Respect vanished. And once again, Chung Ju-young stood on the edge of disaster. His team panicked. They said, "Let's reduce production. Let's stop exporting." But Chung said no. He said, "If we are not willing to improve, we do not deserve success." So he made a huge decision. Hyundai would rebuild everything. New quality checks, better materials, stronger testing. He said, "Let's not compete on price. Let's compete on pride." And year after year, Hyundai improved. They didn't just make cars. They made better cars. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Hyundai had transformed. The world slowly began to see Hyundai not as cheap, but as reliable, smart, and well-built. The same company that once couldn't build a single tire was now winning international car awards, J.D. Power Quality Awards, Design Awards, safety recognitions. In America, people began saying Hyundai is not just a good car for the money, it's a good car, period. After the rise of Hyundai cars in the global market, something strange began to happen in South Korea. People no longer just saw Hyundai as a company. They saw it as hope. Because whenever the country faced a problem, Hyundai stepped in. Whenever something seemed too big, too impossible, too expensive, there was one man who always said, "We will do it." That man was Chung Ju-young. But this new phase of life was not about small ideas anymore. It was about rebuilding a country's future, one massive dream at a time. By the early 1990s, South Korea had transformed. It had moved from poverty to power, from survival to growth. And much of that growth had one thing in common: Hyundai's name on it. Let's look at just how deep Hyundai's influence had become. They were not just making cars anymore. They were building dams, nuclear power plants, oil refineries, high-speed trains, steel mills, industrial parks, container ships, global expressways, even South Korea's very first satellite launch site. And this wasn't by accident. This was Chun's mission. He believed if we only copy the world, we will always be second. But if we build the future ourselves, we can lead. And the Korean people began to believe too. You see, Hyundai was no longer just a brand. It had become a national symbol. Whenever Koreans bought a Hyundai car, they weren't just buying transportation. They were buying confidence. They were saying, "Look at us now. We build our own future." As Hyundai expanded, it became one of the largest employers in South Korea. By the mid-1990s, hundreds of thousands of workers across different industries, steel, construction, design, shipping, electronics, energy, were connected to Hyundai. Every job created by Hyundai supported entire families. Chun knew this. He knew the responsibility was bigger than business. He once said, "Every time we build a new factory, we are feeding thousands of homes." Business is not only about profit. It is about people. In remote towns where there were no jobs before, Hyundai opened plants. And when young students graduated with technical degrees, Hyundai gave them their first opportunity. This was more than success. This was impact. You might think after decades of building everything, Chung would slow down. But no. Even in his 70s, he kept visiting work sites, wearing his signature gray suit and white safety helmet. He walked through hot steel factories, dusty ports, frozen shipyards, talking to workers, asking questions, making notes. He never acted like a king. He acted like a foreman, because deep inside, he still saw himself as that barefoot boy who once cleaned bricks for a few coins. His hunger for growth never faded. And this hunger led to one of the boldest ideas of his life. In the late 1990s, when Chung was in his 80s, he shocked the world again. He announced that he would travel to North Korea. Remember, this was the same North Korea that had fought South Korea in the Korean War. The same country that was politically frozen, dangerous, closed. Most South Korean businessmen would never go there. But Chung Ju-young was not like most men. He believed we are one people. We speak the same language. We must rebuild peace. And so, in 1998, he crossed the border not with words, not with weapons, but with 500 cows. Yes, 500 cows. Why? Because he said during the war, North Korea had taken cows from his family's land. So now, in peace, he was returning the favor. Not with anger, but with forgiveness. It was not just a political move. It was a human move. News channels around the world showed the image of trucks filled with cows crossing the DMZ, demilitarized zone, led by an old man in a suit. It was powerful. It was emotional. It was unforgettable. That one act opened a small door between North and South. And it was Hyundai's founder who turned the key. In the final years of his life, Chung started stepping back from day-to-day operations. But he never stopped thinking. His diary, written in simple Korean, showed pages filled with thoughts, ideas, plans. He still visited his offices, still asked about construction projects, still studied world markets. But his body was weakening. His health was fading. And slowly, the man who once worked 18 hours a day, who once ran for 120 kilometers barefoot, now walked slower. But his mind, sharp as ever, knew time was short. So he began writing letters to his sons, his board members, and his country. He reminded them, never be satisfied with what you've built. Keep asking, what can we build next? In 2001, at the age of 85, Chung Ju-young passed away peacefully. The boy from the village was gone. But what he left behind could never be buried. After his death, South Korea declared a national moment of silence. TV stations paused. News anchors cried. Even his competitors, people who once criticized him, stood up to honor him. Why? Because Chung Ju-young was not just a businessman. He was a builder of dreams. A man who proved that you don't need a college degree to change the world. You don't need permission to build something great. You don't need to be rich to become the foundation of a country's pride. He started life with nothing but dust on his feet and fire in his chest. He ended life with factories, ships, highways, satellites, and the love of millions. And today, the name Hyundai travels on roads across the world, in the US, in India, in Europe, in Africa, because of the fire he carried inside him. Part 4. The Empire After the Builder, and the Eternal Spirit of Chung Ju-young. After Chung Ju-young passed away in 2001 at the age of 85, the nation of South Korea did not simply lose a businessman. They lost a father figure, a symbol of resilience, a man who had been there through war, through hunger, through failure, yet never backed down. His funeral was attended not just by CEOs, but by workers, farmers, engineers, politicians, shopkeepers, mechanics, ordinary people. Some brought flowers, others brought letters. Many brought nothing, only tears, because they knew that without this man, their country might have taken a very different path. The first months after his death were filled with tension inside the Hyundai Group. The empire he had built had grown so large. Construction, cars, electronics, steel, banking, even shipping. And now the leader was gone. People asked, who will lead? Will Hyundai survive? Will it break into pieces? In truth, Hyundai was already changing even before his death. The Korean government had introduced new rules to reduce the power of large family-owned business groups called KIOs. Hyundai, being one of the biggest, was asked to restructure. So after Chun's death, his sons and executives made a bold decision. Hyundai would break into multiple companies, each with its own leadership and focus. This was painful, but it was also necessary. Why? Because Chung's dream was not about one man holding everything. His dream was growth, innovation, and freedom. So Hyundai split into many companies, including Hyundai Motor Company, cars, Hyundai Engineering and Construction, infrastructure, Hyundai Heavy Industries, shipbuilding, Hyundai Steel, materials, Hyundai Mobies, car parts, Hyundai Ram, trains and military equipment. And slowly, each of these companies began to stand on their own feet. They honored the founder not by copying him, but by continuing his spirit. Of all the companies in the Hyundai family, the motor company carried the deepest emotional weight. It was the car that made South Koreans believe in their own strength. So after Chun's death, Hyundai Motors began a massive transformation. The world still remembered the older image. Hyundai cars were cheap but low quality. But now the company wanted to do something bold. They didn't just want to survive in the international market, they wanted to lead it. So they invested heavily in design, bringing in top designers from Germany and the US, developing hybrid, electric, and hydrogen-powered vehicles, improving safety, earning top ratings in crash tests, branding, changing Hyundai from cheap and basic to smart and modern. They opened research centers in South Korea, the US, Germany, and India. They created luxury brands like Genesis to compete with Lexus, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz. They entered Formula One racing technology partnerships, proving their cars were not just reliable, they were high-performance machines. And by the mid-2000s/10s, Hyundai was no longer a joke in the car world. It was a giant. Today, Hyundai sells cars in over 200 countries. It ranks among the top 3 car manufacturers in the world when combined with its partner company, Kia. And none of it would have existed without the courage of one man. After his death, universities around the world began studying his life. Business schools taught students about his leadership style. Leadership experts wrote books about how he took responsibility during crisis, led from the front, took impossible risks, believed in his workers, trusted effort more than talent, and most importantly, never forgot where he came from. Let's not forget, this man had no college degree. He had no investor. He had no background in engineering. He built roads without studying civil engineering. He built ships without shipbuilding experience. He built cars without being an auto expert. He even visited North Korea and tried to reunite divided families without being a politician. Why?
because he believed in human potential. And today, his story is told in classrooms not as a story of business, but as a story of vision.
Grit, sacrifice, and humanity. Here are the final messages people took from his life. 1. You do not need permission to dream. Chung didn't wait for the world to allow him to succeed. He chased trains, knocked on doors, failed again and again, and kept walking. His life says, don't wait. 2. Failures are not the end. They are training. He lost everything more than once, got betrayed, mocked, rejected, but every failure became a new tool. His lesson? If you are afraid of failure, you are afraid of growth. 3. Help others rise as you rise. He didn't just make money. He created jobs, gave people a reason to stay in their hometowns, supported education, donated to schools, and helped rebuild communities. His message: real success is not about how high you go, it's about how many people you lift with you. The most powerful tool is not money, it's character. When people trusted Chung, they didn't do it because he was rich. They did it because he was honest. He kept his promises. He paid his workers. He stood in front of his mistakes. Even when Hyundai failed in America, he didn't hide. He said, "Let us improve. Let us do better." And they did. Today, many people drive Hyundai cars without knowing the story. They press the accelerator, play music, and look out the window, unaware that this simple car is a symbol of one man's unstoppable will. But some of us remember. We remember a boy born in a poor village in North Korea, who was told not to dream, who couldn't afford a train ticket, who ran barefoot across mountains, chasing a future no one else could see. We remember how he failed, got back up, and failed again. How he built roads, ships, cars, and dreams. How he didn't just change a country. He changed what people believed was possible. So what is the real legacy of Chung Ju-yong? It is not just Hyundai. It is not just factories or bridges or awards. His legacy is this truth. Even if you are born with nothing, if you keep moving, if you keep building, one day the world will drive on your roads, sail in your ships, and believe in your story. That is the story of the boy who created Hyundai. And it is a story that must never be forgotten. Let this be more than a video. Let this be a message. If you have a dream, fight for it. If you have a setback, rise again. And if the world tells you you can't, remember this name, Chung Ju-yang, and reply to the world with his famous words, "Have you tried?" And now, before we close this story, let's look at what Hyundai has become today. The company that started with nothing, not even enough money for a train ticket, is now one of the biggest companies in the world. Today, Hyundai is worth over $50 billion. Its cars run in more than 200 countries. Its factories give jobs to over 250,000 people around the globe. And Hyundai has built some of the most expensive and advanced ships in the world, including massive container ships, high-tech oil tankers, high-tech vessels, and their luxury car brand Genesis. It now competes with Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Lexus, and wins international awards. All of this he'd started from a boy with no shoes. This is not just the story of a man. This is the story of what is possible. So if life is hard right now, if you feel poor, alone, or small, if people say you're not smart enough, not rich enough, not strong enough, then remember this story and remember this name, Chung Ju Young, because if he can do it, why not you? And if you want more stories like this, stories that inspire you, stories that teach you English, stories that make you believe in yourself again, then subscribe to our channel now.